As part of the university's service mission, its mission to reach out to the people of Texas, there are a number of programs and initiatives in the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement to help students succeed before they arrive at UT. The UT Charter Elementary School is part of our portfolio. It provides a cutting-edge program designed especially for students who go to schools in underrepresented populations. It is located in East Austin and is exemplarily ranked by the Texas Education Agency. It serves as a concrete model for other East Austin elementary schools, and UT elementary school teachers mentors teachers in these schools. The Neighborhood Longhorn program was started in 1994 as a partnership with the UT Athletics program. This program, led by Selena Ruiz Snowden, serves more than 5,000 students per year in Title I schools in Austin. It has terrific success motivating students to improve their grades by offering incentives such as attendance at UT sporting events and providing tutoring by UT students. 80% of the participating students improved their grades last year. Dr. Kenya Walker and Dr. Eileen Bunkvis, our other co-chair, coordinate 2 programs for high school students that boost college readiness. The first program, the Cambridge program, allows students at underrepresented high schools around the state to receive college credit while earning high school chemistry credits. The high school teachers who participate receive professional development twice a year. The students gain confidence as they meet the goals of the college course. 82% of the participating students receive college credit. The second program is SPURS, or Students Partnering for Undergraduate Rhetorical Success. It pairs high school juniors with university student mentors to work on their writing skills. The mentoring takes place online, but the students also have the opportunity to attend a writing class on campus and meet their mentors. 93% of the high school participants received college-level ratings of proficient or above on their essays. The Institute for Community, University, and School Partnerships, or ICUSP, collaborates with high schools and middle school students, middle schools in Austin to provide leadership opportunities and life skills development for students who have the potential to do well academically but are not thriving. The program is under the leadership of Dr. Kevin Foster, who is actually DDC's first faculty fellow. Last year, 48 out of 52 seniors who participated in the program got accepted into colleges, including the University of Texas at Austin, Texas A&M, MIT, and the College of William and Mary. Once students get to the University of Texas, our Longhorn Center for Academic Success has several programs to help underrepresented students, low-income students, and first-generation college students succeed. Our programs also help prepare them for graduate school by providing research and mentoring experiences. The Longhorn Center is under the direction of Dr. Lennon Moore, who was recently promoted to full professor in the Department of History. That center was a unit that existed before DDCE and was brought into DDC in 2007. At the time, the program served approximately 60 students and served these students only in their freshman year. Since then, the Longhorn Center for Academic Success has tripled the number of students served and has expanded to serve students beyond their freshman year. It has also seen a big increase in first-year GPAs from 2.7 to 2.96, with African American students averaging over a 3.0 GPA. The center's preview program is a summer initiative that helps students transition from high school to college. It provides a jump start from students, introduces them to campus and to professors, and helps them bond with students who have similar backgrounds. And I'm happy to announce today that because of the success of this program, and thanks to the support of the Office of Financial Aid and Services and the President's Office, we're actually expanding the number of scholarships and institutional aid, and all of the participants will have their costs covered. The Gateway program is the core program of the Longhorn Center. Students who participate in this program are outstanding students, yet have lower SAT scores. Through a program of academic advising, peer mentoring, life skills coursework, and a critical thinking course, which will next year be a signature course taught by Dr. Moore, these students have been highly successful. The first year retention rate for those students was 92%, the same as the university overall. Once our students from diverse backgrounds are on the road to success, then we provide the experiences and support necessary to encourage them to enter graduate school or professional school. The McNair's Scholars Program is part of the Longhorn Center for Academic Excellence. It gives undergrads the opportunity to conduct research and exposes them to the possibility of attending graduate school. The first 12 McNair scholars graduated in the 2008-2009 academic year. 11 of those students went on to graduate school. A final DDC program that helps encourage students to go on to graduate school is the nationally recognized pre-graduate internship under the Intellectual Entrepreneurship Program. This internship pairs undergrads with graduate students, mentors, to conduct research in fields that truly interest them. They often work in community to solve real-world problems. The program serves about 200 students a year. Half of them are from underrepresented populations, and half of them go on to graduate school. This presentation is not long enough to discuss all of the division and the university's programs and initiatives, but this represents a sample of how we're leading efforts to make campus more culturally and intellectually diverse. It is our hope that by continuing to partner with colleges, departments, and centers on campus, we will increase the diversity of faculty, the diversity of scholarship, and the diversity of the student body, and in turn contributing to a climate of inclusive excellence that reflects all people in the state of Texas. We hope you enjoy the symposium today and tomorrow and have the opportunity to reflect on the impact of Sweatt v. Painter on this institution and others throughout the United States and on civil rights overall. And just want to note that tomorrow we have an outstanding opportunity to hear from the precursors, and it's going to be held in the Ametris Jurin Residence Hall. And I don't need to tell you the amazing impact that Ametris Jurin had on this campus. And just last week I had the opportunity to meet with an amazing collaborator, Miss Louise Isco, who co-wrote and co-edited the book with Mama Doran. And I'm just very pleased to say that Ms. Isco has agreed to continue that work, to update this work, and I'm just so very excited about this opportunity. And so again, we have made incredible progress, but we have a long way to go. But I am confident that with all the people in the room and all the people that we represent, that we were going to continue to make the University of Texas at Austin meet its mission that was established in 1883 to serve the people of Texas. And we will make sure that UT meets its mission. And that's why we are here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent. As you can see, much has happened, a lot has occurred, and progress has been made. And we certainly have a way to go. But I think under Dr. Vincent's extraordinary leadership, we are well on our way. Thank you again, Dr. Vincent. Prior to our panel discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Gary M. Laverne to the podium. He is the Director of Admissions and Research here at the University of Texas at Austin. But most importantly, he is also the author of Before Brown, Heman Sweatt, Thurgood Marshall, and the Long Road to Justice. Mr. Laverne will come up and read a short excerpt from his book. Mr. Laverne.
I kind of invited myself to this morning when I saw one of the persons who arrived, and so I'll just get to this very short reading. It is a testament to courage and integrity. During the first half of 1950, W. Astor Kirk quietly continued his efforts to be admitted to the UT Graduate School's doctoral program in political science. In mid-January, Kirk had been invited to a discreet meeting at the Capitol with the Attorney General and his assistants. In his memoirs, Kirk remembered that the cordial meeting lasted about half an hour. The Attorney General had offered Kirk a PhD, quote, in an unusually short period of time. But Kirk insisted that UT Graduate School was where he wanted to earn his doctorate. After Kirk's first attempt to enroll in the UT Graduate School, the Regents entered into a contractual agreement with the Texas State University for Negroes in which UT would provide African Americans with classes not offered on the Houston campus. It was through this arrangement that Kirk was accepted as a TSUN student, but offered 2 classes in Austin taught by UT professors. On January 30th, 1950, Kirk went to the UT Department of Government, registered for 2 courses, and paid $26 in tuition. The classes were to begin on February 6th, but Kirk was to report to the YMCA building on Guadalupe, across the street from the campus. He soon learned that he was to be the only student in the class. On February 6th, Kirk reported to room 7 of the YMCA, which had been rented by the university for use as Kirk's class. As soon as the Bible study class that was in there adjourned, Dr. Charles Tim of the Department of Government greeted Kirk. The 2 men talked for about 45 minutes. Kirk calmly and firmly let Dr. Tim know that the arrangements were not acceptable. He emphasized that he had no personal animosity toward Dr. Tim and departed with no hard feelings. As Kirk recalled years later, because of the way I responded to university administrators, to the Texas Attorney General, and to representatives of the press and broadcast media, those faculty members understood and treated me as a decent, honorable, ethical, and professionally motivated human being. As Kirk left the classroom, Dr. Tim said, "I would probably take the same course of action if I were in your shoes." From the YMCA building, Kirk went to the office of UT Vice President J.C. Dolly, who told Kirk that under current Texas law, the university had no discretion in the matter of Kirk's integrating the UT Graduate School. Reporters had been alerted to the developments, and Kirk told them that he had hoped that arrangements could be made which would not make him or the university look ridiculous. I am prepared to meet them halfway on an on-campus arrangement. On March 2nd, 1950, the Texas State University for Negroes issued a refund check to W. Astor Kirk in the amount of $26. Dr. Kirk, where did you get your PhD?
University of Texas.
All right.
How fitting. Thank you so much, Mr. Laverne. At this time, we will begin preparing for our panel discussion. And today, our panel moderator is Dr. King Davis. Dr. King Davis is a professor and Robert Lee Sutherland Chair for Mental Health and Social Policy here at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. King has many professional interests, which include managed healthcare policy, mental health policy and systems, families and consumers of color and service mental health illness, cultural competence and social justice, Black nonprofit organizations, Black philanthropy, leadership, periodontal disease, economic development strategies, and volunteer participation. And this is just a small kernel of Dr. King's wealth of experience as well as his professional interest. I will not spend a lot of time telling you about his academic accomplishments because you can only imagine a man of this stature has achieved them all, Dr. King. But I will share a personal story. As we had informed our advisory council that Dr. King would be our moderator, one of the advisory council members said, "This is so exciting. Our students love Dr. King here at UT, and they cannot wait to be here in the room to be a part of this event." So Dr. King, thank you. And your students are here to see you in action. So Dr. King, please come up and introduce your panelists.
I certainly want to thank Aileen Bumpus for her introduction. And what I'd like to do would be to ask all of you, if you would, to join me in a moment of silence for two stalwart individuals in the civil rights movement. Dr. Ben Hooks, who died last week, age 88, I believe, and just this Monday, the most unusual Dorothy Height. So would you join me, just stand for a second for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. I want to express my thanks as well as have the others to Dr. Gregory Vincent for all the work that he and members of his staff did to make it possible for us to have these 2 days in celebration of Heman Sweatt and all that he actually stood for. Certainly again want to thank Aileen Bumpus for all that she did to make it possible for all of us to be here today as well. She has worked tirelessly to make sure that the panel was constructed, done well, and that all of our participants would be very active. I want to tell you just a little bit of a personal story that I felt in listening to some of the things that people talked about here today. When Choquette started, she made a number of brief comments about history, and so did Dr. Vincent. And there was one line in there that Dr. Vincent mentioned that I want to repeat. And it was a quotation that said, "We cannot forget our history." And I'm indeed a student of history, and one of the things that I've tried to do for many years was to try to put more things in context historically as I possibly could. In sitting and listening to some of those comments, I thought about my family and its trek to Texas in 1864. And they came to Texas in 1864 because my great-great-grandparents had been traded by a slave owner in Tennessee for cemetery plots in a little town called Austin, Texas. And that's how they got here. And my grandfather, who was a really very interesting fellow, ended up later at a place called Houston College about 1912. As I sat and I listened to some of the kinds of things that were said, it made it very clear that history for all of us is extraordinarily important. Important indeed that we place as many things as possible in a historical context. And so I want to do that at the beginning of our panel so that we can put more of the kinds of things that we've heard today in that kind of context. So part of what I did over the course of the last several evenings or so was to go back and to familiarize myself with the history of the state of Texas. And I'm not going to take you through all that because I think we've heard part of it. But I think it's valuable to place what we've heard in three historical contexts. And the first one is that first 60 years of the origins of the University of Texas. the period of strict segregation. And the reason that I think it stands out so remarkably is that the Board of Regents and the legislature in Texas had two goals, mission, or pieces of their vision that they had when they first talked about the origination of the state of, not the state, but the university in 1823. And those two contradictory parts of their mission were the following. One was to establish a university on the hill, what they called the main university, now called the flagship university. That was the primary motivation, in part, to establish a university that would indeed be first class, the main university, the flagship university, not only in Texas, but perhaps throughout the country as well. And the second contradictory part of this was to maintain the Southern tradition of segregation by race. So you could almost say that the first 60 years of strict segregation at the University of Texas at Austin was truly a period of contradictory directions that maintained itself from 1883 until 1947, when the Sweatt case really started its way upward. The second 60-year period started with Heman Sweatt in 1950, and in some respects it ends today, 60 years afterwards. That period is what I think Dr. Vincent described, again, as a period of contradictions. Integration on the surface, segregation in content and purpose. And I think now, in this, the beginning of the 21st century, the new millennium, we're now starting the third and perhaps most critical period in the history of the University of Texas at Austin. This is indeed the third leg of the stool. From 1888 to 1950, 1950 to 2010, and 2010 to 2070. And so what we're asking our panel members in part to do today is to be visionaries in part. To think about the next 60-year period in the history of the University of Texas at Austin. Not simply to talk about 1950 to 2010, as important as that is. Not to allow ourselves over the next couple of days to stay mired in 1888 or 1883 to 1950, but to really use their experiences and the experiences of others to think about the nature of an uncertain future. What will it be like 10 years from now, 20 or 30 or 40 or 50? Because I think in all of the comments that have been made thus far, in the books that have been mentioned this morning as well, part of the undercurrent of all of those is that those who do not know history tend to repeat it. So what I'd like to do is to introduce the esteemed members of our panel, invite them to come and join us as well. And I'd like to start the introductions with Mr. Charles Miles. And one of the reasons that I want to introduce him first is that he has indeed a very unique history. Of our panel members, he is in part one of the very few that did his undergraduate work at the University of Texas at Austin following Sweatt. And not only that, but he's had a very distinguished history as an aide to former Councilman Udry. He's also had a very distinguished history in terms of the Texas Civil Rights Commission. He's also been involved as an assistant comptroller in the Office of the Comptroller in Texas, and has, I believe, an extraordinary background in history personally in terms of his background and the kinds of things that I think he offers us today. And let's welcome Joe. The second person on our panel is Dr. A.L. Mackey. I'd like to invite him as well. Dr. Mackey's path to UT was a bit different. He didn't come to UT, as did Mr. Miles, as an undergraduate. He had this unusual history of first going to Huston-Tillotson University, then got his master's in somewhat the same field of biology and the like, and then came back to the University of Texas to receive his doctorate in 2000. So he brings a different perspective to the university, coming here as a doctoral student. And let's welcome him as well. The third panel member that we have is Dr. Rosalie Martin. Dr. Martin is also a different person in terms of her involvement here on the University of Texas's campus. She's a native New Yorker, has a doctorate in sociology, and has her master's in social work from the University of Texas at Austin. She's been an outstanding faculty member at Huston-Tillotson University for 38 years, revered by her students. She's also a licensed counselor. She does practice in a variety of areas in HIV, in substance abuse, with families, and she does consultation throughout the world. The fourth panel member, if I can find her here, there she is, Dr. Omni Osun Jones. She's going to join us as well. Dr. Jones is a faculty member here, and I think you heard Dr. Vincent in his remarks earlier identified her as the director of the John Warfield Center. She's also one of those exciting and interesting persons in terms of her own background in theater arts. And I remember meeting her the very first year that I was on this campus in the year 2000. And let's welcome her as well. And then the last of our panel members is Choquette Hamilton to join us as well. Choquette is a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, has a bachelor's degree in sociology and in African American studies, has a master's, in fact 2 masters, and then has come back to the University of Texas to assume both administrative positions, formerly with Dr. Ted Gordon, and is now also in the doctoral program in educational policy and planning here at the University of Texas. And let's welcome her. If I were giving out roses this morning, I would actually give those to Choquette Hamilton. And that's because she didn't know that she was going to be a panel member until yesterday. And she very graciously agreed to take the place of Daniel Sparks, another doctoral student who was probably waiting at Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., trying to get here. So we thank her very much for that. You will also notice probably on your program that Reverend Dr. Joseph Parker from St. David's was supposed to join us as well. Regrettably and unfortunately, his mother had emergency surgery a day ago, and when I talked to his assistant late yesterday, he indicated, obviously so, that Reverend Parker would not be able to join us. So for him as well, we thank him for his thoughts, and we're going to start with our panel members. What I did for the panel was to try to get them into the context of thinking long-term about the University of Texas at Austin. I posed for them 5 questions. And we're going to start the first of those questions, and I'll give you an example of what that question is as well, was to have them think about this first decade of the 21st century, this new millennium that we're currently in. And the question goes like this. I want them to give one specific example from this first decade, this new millennium, that they think is the most important challenge for contemporary African American students and perhaps faculty here at the University of Texas at Austin. Let me repeat that question again. Give one specific example. And that can be all over the map, right? They could go anywhere that they chose with that particular question. One specific example from the first decade of the 21st century, this new millennium, that they think is the most important challenge for contemporary African American students here, and perhaps faculty here as well, and perhaps at other universities. And I was asked not to start with him, so I'll start with someone else. We're going to start actually with Dr. Mackey, if we can, and see whether Dr. Mackey can help us to shed a little bit of light. My role, by the way, in this is to prod the members of the panel, reframe the questions if I don't get from them what I think they need, ask them to rethink some of the things that they might say, get them to really do some more thinking about the kind of advice that they may give us that would help us to think about and to make recommendations to the administrators here at the University of Texas about this next 60-year period. What I've termed basically the third 60-year segment in the history and the future of the University of Texas at Austin. There are going to be some 3x5 cards, I think, around. What I'd like to have you do is to print any questions that you may have for the panel members, and near the end of our time, if you'll submit those particular questions, then you'll be able to engage in this as well. Dr. Mackey, do you want to start with us and give us some thoughts about what you've seen in this first decade?
Yes, thank you, Dr. King. Or is it Dr. Davis? I'm sorry.
This puts me in good company when you talk. Go right ahead.
Yes, I think that in order to respond to this particular line of thought, it's a good idea to go back and look at the climate, the campus conditions under which the integration scenario first unfolded, where we had a group of African American students, black students, who came onto this campus, who came on when the attitude was pretty much that their existence would be limited to the opportunity to go to class, partake of whatever transpired in that classroom setting, and then depart. They had little space, little room, little climate for being involved in the campus setting in any other ways. Consequently, they were left with the absence of a sense of inclusion. They were not included in the campus life in any ways that they could relate to. Their task then was to draw from their creative abilities, create a niche for themselves, a niche in which they would feel comfortable in, a niche that would allow them to be successful as students, a niche that would provide for them those other elements of their existence that they needed in order to sustain. And I think that is the theme that comes from that experience, that students now must create a niche that they feel comfortable in, and that is favorable and that is friendly to and for them and their pursuits. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Martin, what do you think's happened during the course of this first decade that's significant for students?
I think the greatest challenge I see students, especially at Huston-Tillotson, as well as I'm sure here at University of Texas, is that African American students find themselves having to work full-time, wanting to take full-time courses, have families and other major challenges. And I think that is one of the challenges we really have to deal with. How do we provide financial assistance to our students so they can be full-time students and be very successful? So I'm thinking it is finding financial ways to support our students. Huston-Tillotson finds it as a major challenge. And when I was here at University of Texas, it was a major challenge. And I think that's what we're facing.
Okay. Dr. Jones?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's important to address this question, so I'm glad it's the one that we're starting out with. I think we're all very aware of the fact that we have the first black president in the White House. And one of the things that that has generated is a lot of conversation around whether or not we live in a so-called post-racial society. It seems to me that that, as a significant event of this moment, will shape how black students, all students at UT and other institutions, begin to think about race and what it is. In other words, we could be lulled into believing that we are in a moment when race is no longer a factor in our lives. And I think it is going to be extremely important for students to understand how to point out very concretely how race is still in our lives affecting all of us. So I think in this moment, with the President of the United States, a black man, that we not be confused, and those of us who are educators help our students not be confused, to teach our classes in such a way, to write in our newspapers in such a way, that we make clear that even though we might not have to contend with burning crosses on our lawns, and some of us still, of course, contend with that, even though we may not have to contend with the outrageous acts of discrimination and racism that were prevalent on this campus and throughout the United States, we must be really savvy about how race works now so that we can continue to fight against it. our fight against racism.
All right, very good. Mr. Bounce?
Well, you know, I'll kind of, I'll do like some of my students do, just say, I basically agree with everything that everyone said. but first of all, I want to acknowledge Dr. Kirk, who did that UT story is manner compared to the many things that he's done for us. Okay, I really do think that the Obama being president and the reaction of white America to him being president is going to help us immensely. Because if the reaction that people are having today to a black being, a competent black, extremely competent black, who is a president for all of the people, I don't see how students cannot see that the fight is not over. I think that is another one of the great things that President Obama is doing for us. So I think that's the main challenges. And I think that the students will meet it because they can't help but see what's happening in this country.
Okay, very good. Choquette.
For those coming to see Daniel, I do apologize. I hope I can live up to his standards. Before I speak, I just want to say that I'm talking on behalf of Choquette Hamilton, the graduate student, and not the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, nor the Multicultural Information Center, nor the University of Texas at all. So if I say anything controversial, let's not go back to Dr. Vincent, speak on behalf of myself. I think one of the major issues, barriers for today is access to higher education. And I know that sounds kind of funny because Dr. Vincent talked about, you know, the first class being of 101 students, and now we have over 2,000 or so African American students on campus. But if you dig deeper into the numbers, it gives you a different picture. And I brought these numbers with me today. In 2009, only 29% of the African American students who applied to the university were admitted. Now, this, in compared to other students, they had the lowest, and it's been decreasing every year since the enactment of the top 10% policy, which started in 1998. In 1998, 55% of the African American students who applied to the university were accepted. Again, in 2009, only 29%. African American students had the greatest growth in the number of students applying to the university. Since 1998, there's been a 238% increase in the number of African Americans applying to this university. So black students want to come here, they're not being accepted. And that's compared to a 38% increase in applications from white students, 74% increase in Asian American students, and 160% increase for Latino students. So what you see is students of color, not just African American students, want to come to the university, they're not being admitted. And the students who are being admitted under the top 10% policy. Those in 2009, 86% of the African American students were admitted were top 10%. Only 34 black students in 2009 came to the university who were not top 10%. This is a tragedy. Now it's 8%. So what are those numbers going to look like now? We are only 4% of this campus. It is. And so having access to this university, not just University of Texas, but other flagship institutions in not only Texas, but in the country. African Americans go to subpar K-12 education. So even if they did want to go to institution of higher education, they're not prepared to be there. So are they retained? Do they matriculate to the next year? So I think that's one of the major issues that students of color, not just African American students, are facing today.
Okay, very good. Now, I heard in the remarks that all five of them. Now, remember the 3 disclaimers. She's speaking as the doctoral student in education policy. But I heard from Choquette, and I heard from several of the other panel members as well, 3 very important pieces that I want to go back to them with. One was, are we in fact in a biracial time period, a post-Sweatt, post-Obama, post-race, post-whatever, where race is increasingly unimportant to these issues? That was one of the things that I think was mentioned. A second was the issue having to do with the various reactions to the first known African-American president in the United States history.
No, we got the word no.
noting that the fight is not over. And then the third part of that was the differential access to higher education and the kinds of numbers that Choquette had mentioned. And I want to go back to Professor Jones, who had raised the issue about race. And are we in fact in a post-racial society? Is race as important as it was before? Are we in some respects overemphasizing the issue of race in the year 2010?
I'm glad to go back to it. In fact, what Ms. Hamilton has just offered substantiates my claim that we are not in a post-racial society. And it is extremely dangerous if we believe that we are, because then we stop working. And if we stop working to eradicate racism, if that's even possible, it means that the structures that are in place will continue and it will only get worse. Some of you have heard me speak in this very room about the problem of the liberal position, because the liberal position in the United States gets to be really safe. The liberal position says everything's okay. See, it's better than it was in the 1950s, and then it means we're not continuing to work. So many of the examples I'd like to use to continue to support what I'm arguing for are so specific to things that are happening at UT that I can't make quite all of the disclaimers that Ms. Hamilton can. I mean, I wish I could only in this moment speak for myself, but there are a number of things, some of which will get clearer in time, but there are a number of things that make it really very clear that this is not the case. I will try to give you one example of this idea of how the liberal position, and I'm hoping that this actually does respond, Dr. Davis, to your question, but how the liberal position gets us in real trouble, and it allows people not to deeply investigate what's going on. Imagine, for example, a theater company that is producing a work, a theatrical work. Let's imagine that that theatrical work has to do with a moment in U.S. history of the transatlantic slave trade. Let's imagine that that theatrical company doesn't have people of African descent to perform some of those roles. What choices do they then make in performing those roles? Do they consult with people who have a lived history with enslavement? And when I say lived history, I was not, thank goodness, enslaved, but I carry a history of that in my spirit, in my understanding, in my intelligence. Does that theater company consult, or do they move forward thinking, it's okay, everything's all right? We as artists have a right to enact these characters in any way we see fit. No one would surely be offended because they know we're good people. When that theater company then makes decisions that merely replicate the stereotypes that many of us have worked very hard to eliminate, how do we then have the conversation? What I'm trying to get at, and obviously I'm doing this all in code, because again, I don't want to be too specific yet. The specifics will come out. My point is that if we don't look closely at what is going on in terms of race, we only perpetuate what's already there. The theater company in question is going to be using a number of white performers to be enslaved Africans, and that will be all right if you're going to give them agency and power. But if in your mind you haven't done the hard work to understand how black people are their own agents, that enslaved Africans don't have to bend hunch-shouldered, don't all have to be in tattered clothing, what about giving agency to them? Then you are only going to do the same thing that you know. I hope I've made that point clear. Clearly, it's really an important one for me, and my own area is theater and dance. So I'm very connected to issues of representation and how that, on television, on our stages, in the opera, how those choices, those artistic choices, can either elevate us and give us new ways of thinking about who we are, or leave us right where we are. So again, I hope I got at
Mr. Miles, do you want to start next question?
I think I don't have to make any disclaimers, so I will say that what you're saying, a classic example is something that's going on right here during this symposium. And some people might not like it, but the Barbara Smith Conrad film is an example.
Yes.
That, I was on campus in 1956, and we hardly remember that incident. See, now,
Why do you say you hardly
we hardly remember it? Because we didn't remember it. It probably didn't take place within the framework of what we were struggling with. I mean, the other students who were here at the University of Texas. But if we aren't careful, history will be written in a manner that's it. That was not it. Now the precursors are trying to make sure that you all don't think that that's it, you see. And we'll be around a long time, probably. I won't. Leon. That's the way the bylaws are written.
Let's go to a comment that Choquette made about the numbers. And I'm going to ask Dr. Martin, who mentioned something about dollars and the ability of students to be able to manage in the current environment. Maybe to go back and comment, not specifically about the numbers, but one of the elements that Choquette Hamilton mentioned, and that I think Dr. Vincent mentioned as well, is the readiness of African American students, in particular high school settings, to matriculate in universities and colleges in Texas. Dr. Martin, any comments?
I believe that our students, a lot of our students are underprepared to even go on to higher education, not only for the University of Texas, not only for Huston-Tillotson College. And so that when students take various kinds of tests and they're first-time students going to universities, they don't have families that are very supportive of them, who have not received college degrees. So many of them do not have the motivation, they don't have the support, and so they may be underprepared. And I think that's where Huston-Tillotson, for example, historical black colleges, have an edge over UT, in that we are prepared, we are trained to work with underprepared students to bring them up to a level where they can succeed and do well. And I do know that many of our students have gone into tremendous professions and contributions. And so in a sense, when we talk about numbers, they're very relative. We can work with numbers if we have resources and if we have motivation, if our students are motivated to do the work, we can work with them. And when I was at University of Texas, I came in twice. 1967, graduated in 70 with a master's in social work, again graduated in 79 with a PhD. And during those times, I remember clearly being told that we should operate from a colorblind perspective. And I'm thinking, I'm black, okay, look at me. And if you look beyond it, and if you have to not see me to recognize me, there's a real problem. And so when we talk about numbers, we're really talking about how do we create a culture, an environment that says, welcoming, that we heard earlier. How do we create an environment that says this is a safe place to be, and that with your unique differences, we value it? And it's related not only to race, but class, sexual orientation. It's related to gender and all those various variables that people are discriminated against.
I'm interested in that, and I would if I can ask you a question. Well, could you explain for me, reconcile how University of Texas is so successful in its athletic programs, and they aren't as successful in other programs like the things you're talking about? I mean, you know, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'd like to know.
Well, let's go down to Choquette and raise some of those issues about the numbers. She'll still speak as a doctoral student.
Yeah. Am I responding to Ms. Charles?
To Mr. Miles.
Mr. Miles, am I responding to
Yeah, that's fine. Anyone who can.
Okay.
We're going to go down the road here.
I was trying not to bring up the football thing.
Well, all the
Can I go to the post-racial question?
Well, let's stick with the football.
Okay, all right. Well, the question was, why is the...
how can they be so successful in keeping athletes in school vis-a-vis these other students that don't even seem to get here?
Well...
Now, let's stay...
Okay.
That's a real question.
I think it has a lot to do with resources. Mr. Brown puts in a lot of money to keep his players on the field. He makes sure that the ones who need to be there are there, regardless of physical injuries,
or
grades, whatever, and they have the money to do it. And once they're finished, once they can no longer be used, they let them go. because if you look at the retention rates or the graduation rates of our football players, it is disgusting. And it is ridiculous, and I don't have those numbers. I can probably Google them on my phone while we're on here, and I can get them for you. But I can tell you this, those students probably have a lower graduation rate than our African-American students who are non-athletes, and that's because they have the resources while they're here, but then when they're no longer of use for Mac Brown and his football program, then what? And now some of them do come back and graduate, and that's great, and those who, I know plenty who do come back, but for the most part, you know,
But we do need some pharmacists like Olis here. I think he's the only pharmacist I know that graduated from university. There are probably a few.
There are others.
Oh, a few more, not many.
Dr. Jones, how about your comment about that same question?
Ms. Hamilton really said it. You know, there's the only thing that I would add to that, because the only thing I would add to that is that we have to begin to tell the truth. One of the reasons why racism continues to exist, and I'm back at my liberal moment, right? One of the reasons why it continues to exist is that we're not all telling the truth. We know how the football team continues to do what it does. We all know. And if you're faculty at the University of Texas and you've taught football players, you know that you've been approached by the athletic department to please pass the student, even though and it's the male athletes that have this difficulty more than the female, even though he's not done what he needed to do to finish that class. And we are not all in safe spaces to tell the truth, whether we can represent ourselves or representing many others. But this is a huge issue at the University of Texas that faculty raise every now and then, but it's not addressed seriously. That football team brings in too many resources to the university for it to be critiqued in a serious way.
Okay.
And I just want to add one thing, and it's really a disservice. To these young men, really.
It's a real disservice. Right.
Dr. Mackey had a comment.
Yes, I like to take a little bit different approach, and in doing so, I'm probably going to preface my remarks by saying that numbers are great. Numbers are good to look at. They tell us a lot of things, but numbers are really diagnostic tools. They help us to diagnose problem areas. They tell us that there are some things that we need to be concerned about, and these are the kind of things that we need to look at. But they don't give us the directions for providing a cure for whatever that illness is. We get the symptoms, but somewhere there's got to be a cure. And using the question or the concern about the ability to retain athletes, to attract athletes, it brings to me the notion that it is the position of the university and the attitude, and this is not just the University of Texas, but this is something that applies to universities around the country. Attitude is the issue here. How can we best benefit from the presence of our African American students on our campuses? I go back to an experience that I had as a graduate student and working in a fellowship setting where there were a team of instructors professors who were part of that fellowship structure. And each of one of those professors had their own area of concern and their own areas of research focus. Whenever it came time to review their projects, and whenever there was a site visit from the NIH team, the NSF team, when they came in to conduct their reviews, being the only African American in that department, I always had to avail myself to be present and sit in on those reviews. The issue was that we have representation. Here he is.
That's true. Me too.
And this is what we're faced with. We have athletes on our campus. They're part of our student population. They look great when it comes to our numbers. When we say that we've got X number of African Americans on our campus, we've got X number of students here, there, but we don't really get the true picture of what the life of that student is like. And we need to look at encouraging, putting in place some mechanisms to encourage shaping the attitude, reshaping the attitude so that the concern is not so much focused on what can we gain out of the student presence, but what can we contribute to the development of those students so that they become productive citizens.
Well, I would like to mention, since I brought this up about the numbers, it's not only the athletic department. I understand that. I would like to know how many students do we have in medical school, University of Texas Medical School, dental school, law school, and et cetera. And how much does the University of Texas, how much is the University of Texas involved in hiring architects, engineers, planners to develop their massive plans and so forth? I see those are, you're talking about after 2010. That's what I'm talking about. Sure. That's where we need to go. I mean, we need a lot of doctors. We need a lot of pharmacists. We need a lot of engineers and so forth. We need many more of them than we do football players, because you can play football when you leave high school, if you're good enough.
One of the undercurrents here, though, that I think your question raises is that these are just not any football players. These are just not any basketball players.
If they're not good, they end up just...
They are absolutely the most outstanding athletes generally in Texas. And when large universities like Texas play against traditionally or historically black colleges and universities, the scores are usually double. And so part of what's there is that the large universities, tier 1 universities, are in fact getting the best athletes possible. And they make investments in the lives and careers of those athletes going back to Pop Warner leagues. Why not the same as I think Mr. Miles is raising, to identify prospective scholars much earlier and to provide part of the development and so forth that's going along. I think Dr. Vincent mentioned a number of those programs this morning. Any other comments about these issues that have just been raised?
I did want to respond to you, Mr. Miles, about you were asking about architects and
medical school,
engineering. The College of Natural Sciences does not have one African American faculty member on this campus. Out
of how many, since we're talking about numbers?
I don't know exactly how many they have, but they don't have any.
Okay. That's bad enough.
Now we have, as Dr. Vincent mentioned at the beginning in the opening session, we have 114 tenured and tenure-track faculty members on this campus, which is one of the highest percentages of flagship state institutions in this country. And not one of those are in this in College of Natural Sciences. So if you're asking to create a pipeline for doctors and engineers, and why would African American students want to go to the College of Natural Sciences if they're not going to see anyone who looks like them, or it doesn't appear to be a welcoming environment? So that's the first thing. The College of Architecture. In the past 8 years, they produced one black PhD. Just one. Now, they had 6 in 1960. One in between 2000 and 2010. Look at those numbers. What African American student wants to go to the School of Architecture to get his PhD or her PhD if no one there is welcoming them, or they don't feel welcomed in that environment? So these are the things that we need to address. And another barrier here, not only at the University of Texas, but I'm sure this happens across the state of Texas and other universities.
Very good.
So that takes us back to commitment and awareness again.
Absolutely.
Commitment, priorities, and awareness.
Now, I do want to say that President Powers, he has been working towards changing these. He does have the thematic recruitment program in faculty, which helped us get to 114 faculty members. It wasn't always like that. He came from the law school where he was the dean. Now the law school has one of the highest percentage of African American students in this country of any law school. So President Powers does have a clear commitment to diversity and increasing diversity, but he can't do it by himself.
Yes.
I think the other...
I have 2 sons that finished law school, and I think you're getting too many lawyers now. They can hardly...
We need to send them over to the STEMs, right?
Finished University of Texas Law School.
Yes. I was going to say that part of having recruiting students are one thing, but graduating students is a far different question. So that I looked at some of the UT statistics as well. I went to 2008, and it indicated that in 2008 you all had here 1,810 students, but you only graduated at that year 389 students, which is a 3.1%. So when we look at recruitment, what's happening within those 4 years? Why are students leaving? I get some at HT, trust me. So why are they leaving this institution, which is flagship institution, and go to a HBCU, which does not have the same status? I think it's great, and I think we're higher. But so why are they leaving you all? And so some of the reasons are that many of our students really need this sense of family. And what we create at our institution is this sense of family. And so as a professor, I'm not only a professor, I may be a mom to somebody who really needs a mom, someone who nurture them and care for them and kind of move them through the maze of being at an institution. So I think one of the things we need to address is how do we keep students, this is a problem at HT as well, but how do we keep students once they get here? What about the emotional intelligence? How do we reach out to them? How do we feel with them? How do we move them through? And I think that's a problem here at HT, certainly, I mean UT. And I know when I was here, it was a problem. And whenever they needed somebody black, they looked at me, but because there were no others in my classes.
Dr. Jones?
Let me just say one word about that, because it is a good question. Many of us are trying to figure out why students don't stay, and we have lots of possible answers, as Dr. Martin has offered some. Let me say that I think we're also in this interesting moment where we're in this weird kind of double bind. What Dr. Martin offered as needing a home environment and being welcoming and those things, if we acknowledge that, if the university were to acknowledge that, they'd have to acknowledge some difference for black students. The minute you start talking about difference for black students, that takes you down, that can take you down another kind of dangerous road. And I think many of us understand that saying certain students may expect a certain kind of environment needed, that that's not a dangerous thing. But once you admit to some idea of difference, then that opens the door to, well, maybe they're not smart enough because they're different. And maybe, I mean, it could lead us that way. So we're in an interesting moment, I think, where we black folks are arguing for being the same intellectually and different, perhaps, socially or emotionally in other ways. And so I think it's complicated for that reason, that it's not an easy, we can say, yes, we need this environment, but to do that means we might be opening the doors.
Does that relate in part to the same issues and questions that we raised about athletes? That Texas takes the finest athletes in the country. Are you suggesting in some respects that Texas doesn't take the finest black students intellectually or academically? And I think we've heard a couple of comments about that. One made by Dr. Vincent earlier this morning, one made by Choquette, and I think hinted at in other ways as well. What about the recruitment? Why isn't there the same emphasis perhaps placed that would enable more students to do is what I think Dr. Martin is raising? Successful matriculate. Dr. Mackey?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on this one. And we talk about differences. We can look at the athletic department and we can see differences there. We can see that within the athletic department, they have their tutorial staff and all the tutorial assistants in place to ensure that those athletes succeed. They have the counselors there. They have the advisors, the athletic advisors and so forth. They have a complete staff of individuals whose primary responsibility is to focus on those athletes and make sure that they are around for as long as their eligibility will allow them to be around. Why can't we do that for the remainder of the population, student population? And we say that the African American students are different, then the athletes are different as well. So if we
creating learning communities,
put in place, as Dr. Martin says, create those learning communities in the remainder of the student population. Learning communities comparatively similar to what we see in the athletic department. Then this would be a way to go. This would be a consideration to give attention to. And I think it's being ignored by many of the institutions of higher education.
If I can, before Mr. Miles goes, how long does the university do that? Response? Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that has come up in our meetings of the precursors is that the University of Texas, incidentally, I want to say that Dr. Vincent and his organization is really doing a good job. So I mean, they are really leading in the right directions to do what needs to be done, I think, beyond 2010. But the University of Texas, I don't think they even hardly knew about Raymond Johnson before we brought it up. See, the University of Texas do not, we know all about Cedric Benson and Roosevelt Leaks and et cetera. But we don't know about the people that's been, that's some people that's been tremendously successful that came to the University of Texas between 1956 and beyond. And the University of Texas do not even mention them. They probably don't even know about them. I think we are precursors of beginning to try to make sure that they know about these people. Raymond is one of the outstanding mathematicians in the country. I mean, outstanding. And I don't think they even knew about him. At least they've never done anything to try to recruit other mathematicians, as far as I know. It may be so. And Dr. Teal, who went to the University of Texas, is one of the top medical scholars in the country. And then I could just go down, and we produced 3 or 4 PhDs in the when I was at the University of Texas. And most people don't even know that these are products of the University of Texas. You see, so if we would do like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and other major schools, Rutgers and other major schools, then maybe we would be able to recruit some people like we do athletes. The reason we get athletes is because everybody wants to go where Earl Campbell went.
Okay, very good. I want to go back to this comment about creating an environment. Dr. Martin talked about it, and in some respects, several of us have sort of raised that as an issue. When Dr. Vincent gave that wonderful slide presentation this morning, there were a series of programs that are operating in the community, and he mentioned the quality of high school education. It's unlikely that many people, one, will enter the university, succeed in the university, and come for master's and doctoral degrees without adequate preparation. Is there something here that UT needs to be doing beyond, prior to students coming here at the high school or maybe junior high school level? Is there a need for a Pop Warner Educational League?
Well, the University of Texas is a flagship, one of the major research universities in the world. And they should be doing meaningful research in this regard as to what needs to be done and what should be done, just as they do billions of dollars worth of defense research. And I'm familiar with that. So we need to do some things in the area of whatever needs to be done. I don't know, I'm not an expert on elementary and secondary, expert on anything, but especially that. But people, they need to do some meaningful research. I mean, Dr. Martin mentioned a few things that could be done. I don't know how do you do this family atmosphere, but it can be done without violating the rules and laws and so forth. But there needs to be some meaningful research and some money spent on research as to how to do that. I think that's your field, isn't it? Okay. Maybe you can get a good grant.
Choquette? And then we'll come back to Dr. Mackey. Okay.
I would like to put my Division of Diversity and Community Engagement hat back on. I think the division is doing a great job, at least in starting the process of looking at the pipeline and providing programs to address this very issue of inequitable education, particularly the P through 16 pipeline. Particularly, as many of you may or may not know, the UT Elementary School is part of the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, predominantly Latino, sits in East Austin, and each year has been recognized academically. We have neighborhood Longhorn programs. We have the Young Nights, Young Voices mentoring programs in the community. We are sponsors of the African American Men and Boys Harvest Foundation. So Dr. Vincent has been taking some time thinking clearly and thinking through how do we address the pipeline issue. Because even if we do get access to students here at the university, they won't be retained because they won't be prepared. And so this is something that we have been working on as a division. And we're not there yet, but we do talk about it.
Any last comments about any of those issues that the panel wants to raise? Because we're going to go to the questions from our audience in just a second.
So I would just one comment, and I do like the idea of the collaboratives with other institutions. I think there was a collaborative between the University of Texas and Huston-Tillotson involving the pre-engineering program. This is an excellent mechanism to bridge that gap that exists between college level preparedness between high school and the time that they enter college. Other sorts of collaboratives might be developed. These are things that could be looked at. The UT Elementary School, that's a good initiative. I just feel that there are other models that could be developed that could be productive as well.
And I would like to say that I would love for UT to work closer with HBCUs. We're just on the other side of the highway. All you have to do is go across the highway. And we're over there. And in the past, we have worked with some of the departments here. I've worked with the School of Social Work in the past. And I'm thinking that we have a lot of things that we can bring to the table to help you all understand some of the issues that we've discussed. And so I'm thinking that if when you all have proposals, sometimes departments come to us because they need an HBCU for diversity reasons for proposals they make, right? So they submit these proposals, they have us there listed, and that's the end of it. We don't hear anything else about it. We don't know what's going on. We have to inquire further. Was it funded, et cetera? But I really think that if we're serious about bridging this gap, that come on the other side of IH35, we're over there, and we really do. We're talented professors. We're skillful, we do research, and we have students who also are very talented as well. So come visit us over there.
Okay.
In addition to that, you have I teach a little bit at Osun Community College, and you have a large number. That kind of addresses the question that you raised earlier about the finances. You have they're much cheaper than the University of Texas. You have a large number of African American students at a community college level that are very, very outstanding students, much smarter than I was when I stumbled through Texas. But that's another source of recruitment, and the university does some work with Austin Community College, and there are other community colleges throughout the state.
Let's go to questions from our audience that's here. That first question is, being biracial doesn't mean race is not important to you. In many instances, it is made more of an issue. Why do you believe that President Obama is labeled black and not black and white or biracial?
Because of the one drop rule, you heard of
That's
that?
true. That's just true.
That should take care of that.
Anyone else in terms of that?
I think he said it all.
The next question says, I was struck by Dr. Vincent's description of walking onto campus, feeling like it was a fortress. What can students who value diversity in their classes and in their friends do to make this a more welcoming, less threatening environment for African Americans or other underrepresented populations? What needs to change?
I think we've named many of the things that need to change. I would like to mention just on a personal note that when I came to UT, I kind of coming from Hearn, Texas, Dr. Kirk would know where that is, Brazos Bottom. I felt that I was coming to heaven instead of those barracks that I came to, even in the barracks that I came from, that looked like prisoner of war camps that they had outside of my hometown, German prisoner of war during World War II. But, you know, I think this group is really on the right track to doing. I mean, we can't do everything. We're going to help lots of precursors if we do the things we're talking about, and I'm sure we are if Leon has anything to do with it, but because he's going to stay on us. So I think with our help and the help of everybody here, I think we can go on forward and create
What kinds of other things should UT do to be a more welcoming environment? Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm still a very strong proponent of the idea of attitude. Until you address issues of attitude, you're not going to make really remarkable progress in any endeavor. Until some focus is given to address the issues of prevailing attitude among the majority population, then you're not going to make any real headway. It may be a circumstance where you'll just have to let that particular issue live its life and make adjustments to compensate.
Go right here.
I actually have a long list of things the university can do. I will only mention a few of them.
What hat are you wearing?
This is graduate student Choquette here. Okay, one of the things that Dr. King used to say was that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the focus of this symposium is African American students, people, issues, but the issues of civil rights and having a welcome environment goes beyond just black. It's about everyone being welcomed, including people in the queer community, people in the Latino community, Asian American students, and faculty and staff. And so some of the issues right now currently facing the university, we don't have domestic partner benefits. Okay, so we've lost several faculty members, particularly those of color, who do identify as queer and cannot have bring their partners and get benefits for them. So we lose them to other universities who are more progressive than the University of Texas and who do have domestic partner benefits. Also, graduate recruitment. At the University of Texas, only 3% of the graduate class are African Americans, and Latino students aren't that much ahead of them. So we need to do more recruitment in the graduate field. If you want more professors of color, you need a pipeline to get there. So you need more graduate students of color to create that pipeline. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, this College of Natural Sciences, the College of Architecture, there's several colleges on this campus that do not have African American faculty. And there has not been a concerted effort, from what I can tell as a student, that they're even trying to get those people in there. So that's another thing. Also, looking at the structures that set up discrimination and segregation here on our campus. Let me, just have you think for a second. And this speaks to the post-racial, are we in a post-racial society? If you look at the way, say, our students are housed in the dorms, there's a system of institutionalized discrimination that segregates our students by class. The Mama Duren Hall that sits right on the corner, that's named after Almetris Duren. Very nice dorms. Who can afford that? Not students coming from low-income backgrounds. So those students are forced to stay at Jester, stay at the other dorms. So what happens is you are starting to funnel these students, and all of the students from low-income backgrounds are all being segregated and staying in one dorm, where the students who do have the money, do have the resources to stay in these nicer dorms, are being funneled and segregated into the nicer dorms. So you're reproducing this institutionalized discrimination that has been, it's happened in this country since
forever.
Yeah, since we've been here. So if we want to really challenge the university, no one talks about that. No one thinks about those structural things that reproduce these inequities on our campus. So if we really want changes, we will challenge the administration. I am very critical of the university. At the same time, I love this university. I'm here, I work here, I came here as a student, I came back. I'm here because I want the university to continue to grow, and that's why I'm critical. And you can help the university grow if you're critical too.
Well,
let's see, I think Dr. Jones is next. We'll cover it.
I just have a quick response, because it sounded from the question that it might have come from a student. And so what can a student do? One of the things that I think students can do is to be, and this is, I know I'm a professor saying this, but be brave in your classes. When things are going on in the classroom that are not appropriate, call professors out on it. And if you do that collectively, there is safety in that. And when I say things that are going on in the classroom that aren't appropriate, when history is being taught to you and vast populations are omitted from that history, it is incumbent upon all of the students in the room to be aware of that, not only the students of color. When a faculty person, and I recognize, again, I'm a professor saying this, and students have much less power, that's the way it's set up, but when professors say things to other students in the classroom that are derogatory, that are demeaning, it's incumbent upon all the students to take that up, not just the students of color. To me, that's one primary way that other students, white students, can help students of color feel comfortable in the class, so that the students of color do not feel that they are alone when they acknowledge racist things that are going on.
And I think I'm sorry.
Mr. Miles, and we'll come back to Dr. Martin.
Well, as a start, it probably seemed to me that we should have said this at the beginning. It would be a good idea to get a African American or minority regents. The only regent that I know that has ever been on UT, and he happens to be a friend of mine and oldest there, is Zan Holmes. We would not have had the Almetris Duren dormitory without him. We probably wouldn't have the diversity department funded the way it is if Zan hadn't been on that regent. And I don't know of any other African American that has ever been on the UT Board of Regents. I think I'm right about that. That sure would help if we could get a regent on there, Well, and then number two, we need to do the things I talked about earlier, is the fact that we need to get some of these architects, engineers, and so forth, work on the University of Texas campus on all this structure, all this building that they do, and all this money that they spend. Well, I bet not one black except a garage on the campus that John Chase designed, that one black has ever been involved in anything that, not just the University of Texas at Austin, but the system, and would spend billions of dollars on development and some of everything else. And very few blacks, I bet it's less than 1/10 of 1% of black participation in university expended money that they spend on different things. Probably less than that. I don't even know. I'll have to ask Raymond when he get here, what is the lowest percentage?
Dr. Martin?
I just wanted to say that I have spoken recently to some UT students, and they were talking about perception as well as non-UT students. And so the perception at UT has to be changed. That's part of the attitude. The perception that that's the up-to-date school, and even among African Americans, HT students sometimes see UT African-American students as being and uppity students, those we can't converse with, can't work with together. So these perceptions among both these institutions really do need to change. And as we trying to welcome new students to our class, in my classroom, it's a safe place. My students know that what's said in this classroom stays in this classroom. And so in creating this safe place, they know that they are each other's keeper. And so that's one way that we can provide this environment where students of different diversity, it's not only race, like you said, it is class, it's sexual orientation, that they know when I go to Dr. Martin's class, it is safe, I can talk, I can share, and nobody else will share my business in the streets. So creating this safe environment where it's okay to be.
We've got about probably 200 more questions, right? The last question is one that has been raised, and I'll ask all the panel members to address it because we have only about 5 more minutes left. And it says, will the panel speak to UT's active involvement in the displacement of black Austinites? Wheatville removal, school closures, etc.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they were through doing that by now. I've lived here in Austin, ever since I've been out of Austin a few times. But I've lived here, and I saw the Blackland area. Dr. Brewer, who's back in the audience there, lived in it. I wish she were on this panel. She could really tell you about that. That's a gentleman where the left field, I think, is in your backyard, what used to be your backyard. So. I don't know. I don't know the status of UT. I thought they were going to stop once they got past Chicon. They didn't want to destroy the Alpha House on it.
Dr. Martin, comment from you? Closing comment?
I go to David Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. Reverend Parkhurst is my pastor, so I'm sorry that his mom is ill. But every time I go to church, I see the baseball field. The baseball field used to be housed by African Americans, and because of eminent domain, their houses were taken from them. And 19th Street Baptist Church is across the street from the baseball field, and now it's a parking lot. And so 19th Street Baptist Church had to remove itself and go elsewhere. And so what happened in our community, we're seeing gentrification, we're seeing influx of a variety of people, which is both good and bad. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But it's there, and that's part of that perception, and part of that image is that they're just coming over and taking over stuff. And so part of it is how do we change those perceptions is important.
I don't think eminent domain was used to get those properties. I think they ended up some shady real estate transaction, I think, is the way that most people lost those. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's go to Dr. Mackey for
yes, as we look at the expansion of the university, the plan was, and all of the early publicity said that the expansion would continue to extend over to Chicon. What was not told to us was that this was a physical expansion. The actual expansion really extends well beyond, and I would say over to probably about Cedar, especially when you have the athletic events and you look at what the traffic situation is to be like, and you look at how all of the parking areas, on-street parking, is taken up by individuals coming to the athletic events. So this is an impact that extends far beyond what was initially proposed and what was initially communicated to the public. And this situation creates a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of anxiety in the black community and a little bit of animosity that emerges from that toward the university, because it just does not create for the most wholesome kind of relationship between the university and the community. And that's an impact that I think gets swept aside and nobody really gives much attention to it.
Dr. Jones?
I think it would be very helpful if community leaders and black leaders on campus worked in closer association. In that way, we could pool our efforts to collectively approach the regions, approach the president about these things that are a problem. I think right now, we work fairly independently. I know that DDC has done an enormous job of being a part of a variety of communities, but I think as director of the Warfield Center, Dr. Gordon, the chair of the department, will have the ICUP, the Institute for Critical Urban Policy, soon. There are a number of black faculty on campus. Our program coordinator for the Warfield Center is here with us today, Stephanie Lang. I think if we can work more closely, all of us can work more closely with community leaders, black community leaders, we then can have a collective voice in talking about how the university is encroaching on East Austin and other personal and social violations that the university is committing. So this is my pledge to try to work more so that we can bring these issues up as a single force rather than disparate units.
Ms. Hamilton?
Just piggybacking off of you, Dr. Jones. The university cannot take back what it's done to the East Austin community. It's always going to be there in history, and those wounds go very deep. However, I do know that the division is working on repairing those relationships. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be easy a task, but I was part of the implementing or instituting the Community Engagement Center. We were actually invited into the Ebenezer Baptist Church building over there on the corner of East 11th Street. And we house there the Community Engagement Center, where this is the beginning of trying to repair those relationships and to show that we are sorry for what we did. And so while it's only a small step forward, I think it's a positive one, and it shows that there is a way to kind of start working to repair those relationships. That was DDC. Now this is graduate. I think East Austin should ask for reparations from the University of Texas at Austin. And continue to have dialogue and have a discussion with the community and the university about what's happening in East Austin.
Okay, all right. Let's give these guys a real round. It's always good to end where we started, in a way. And we started in part with both Choquette Hamilton and Dr. Vincent giving us sort of a historical overview of those things that, in fact, were here at the beginning of the thoughts about the University of Texas at Austin, really in 1827, up through the 1880s, the 1950s, the 1960s. And we're now thinking about sort of, as I said earlier, the third part of this trilogy, the next 60 years. And I kept my notes, and I think I've heard from our panel, not just a review of those things that have happened in the earlier part of the 1950s through 2010, but I think they accepted the challenge of really raising issues about how does the University of Texas go forward. I think they've done an extraordinarily good job in sparking our thinking about some of that. We greatly appreciate your questions. We'll keep those questions. We'll share them with the rest of the panel members and folks in the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. And I want to end by thanking all of you as well for taking time out from whatever schedules you had to come and be a part of this. We've come in part not to simply celebrate the life and the contributions of Heman Sweatt. Heman Sweatt was in part a precursor of all the kinds of things that could in fact happen at the University of Texas if in fact the contradictory mission and vision of the university cast in the 1800s would change. No one has asked the University of Texas at Austin to alter their vision about being the flagship university in the state. What has been asked? I think historically, first 60 years, the second 60 years, is that it in fact achieved the kinds of goals and vision that Dr. Vincent mentioned earlier. And that's to be a first-class university in terms of diversity and scholarship as well. Thank you all very much. We've got another piece of this. It starts, I think, at 2:30, and I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Bumpus and ask our panel members not to leave just yet.